I'm Victoria Mitchell, 32, standing in my childhood home in Palo Alto, California, watching my family celebrate my younger brother Ryan's engagement to pharmaceutical heiress Amanda Zhang. My mother's voice carries across the room as she tells yet another guest about her successful investment banker's son, while gesturing vaguely in my direction with, and that's Victoria. She's between opportunities. Between opportunities. That's been her favorite euphemism for the past 8 years. Better than unemployed, less harsh than failure, but still carrying that perfect note of disappointment that Ellen Mitchell has perfected over decades of practice. What she doesn't know, what none of them know, is that I'm currently worth more than everyone in this room combined. That the startup that went nowhere, they mock me for attempting, has quietly become one of the most valuable private medical technology companies in the world. That while they think I'm living in their basement coding failed apps, I actually own a penthouse in San Francisco and vacation homes in 3 countries. But in approximately 10 minutes, when Amanda's father arrives at this party, the truth is going to detonate like a bomb in the middle of their carefully constructed narrative about their disappointing daughter. Before I share how 8 years of lies are about to spectacularly unravel, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to hide your success from family who'd already written you off? And if this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing. Now let me tell you how I went from being the Mitchell family failure to revealing a truth that left them speechless. Growing up in Palo Alto should have been a tech entrepreneur's dream. The heart of Silicon Valley, where garage startups became billion-dollar companies and innovation was in the air we breathed. But in the Mitchell household, there was only one acceptable path to success: traditional, prestigious, and visible. My father, Dr. James Mitchell, was chief of neurosurgery at Stanford Medical Center. My mother, Ellen, was a senior partner at Wilson, Kraft & Associates, one of the Bay Area's most prestigious law firms. Success in our family meant advanced degrees from name-brand universities, corner offices in glass towers, and careers that could be easily explained at country club dinners. My younger brother Ryan understood the assignment perfectly. Stanford undergrad, Wharton MBA, straight into Goldman Sachs. By 28, he was the youngest VP in his division, pulling down bonuses that made even our success-obsessed parents nod in approval. He dated the right girls from the right families, played golf at the right clubs, and never colored outside the carefully drawn lines of Mitchell family expectations. Then there was me. The problematic one. The daughter who preferred coding to cotillion, who read programming manuals instead of case law, who saw beauty in algorithms rather than org charts. From an early age, I was different in ways that made my family deeply uncomfortable. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became my mother's refrain when I chose computer science over pre-med at Berkeley. Tech is so unstable. So unpredictable. What happened to becoming a doctor like we discussed? We hadn't discussed it. They had decreed it, and I had quietly rebelled. College was where I truly found my tribe. Surrounded by others who spoke in code and dreamed in startups, I thrived. While Ryan was impressing recruiters with his perfect GPA and internships at Fortune 500 companies, I was building applications in my dorm room, teaching myself languages that weren't offered in any classroom, and networking with people my parents would have dismissed as those tech people. The first crack in my relationship with my family came senior year when I turned down medical school acceptances to join a health tech startup. The founders had seen an app I'd built to help diabetes patients track their insulin levels, a project born from watching my college roommate struggle with managing her condition. "You're throwing away your future for what?" my father had raged. "To play with computers at some company that probably won't exist in a year?" "It's not playing, Dad. We're building technology that could help millions of people manage chronic conditions. If you want to help people, go to medical school. Become a real doctor." Real. That word carried so much weight in our house. Real careers. Real companies. Real success. Anything that didn't fit their narrow definition was dismissed as fantasy, hobby, or worse, failure waiting to happen. The startup lasted 18 months before running out of funding. Not unusual in Silicon Valley, where failure was often seen as education. But in the Mitchell household, it was proof of everything they'd predicted. "We tried to warn you," my mother said, not bothering to hide her satisfaction when I moved back home. But you always were too stubborn to listen. Now look where it's gotten you. Ryan, home for Christmas from his analyst program, was less subtle. Maybe now you'll get serious about your life. I could probably get you an interview for an admin position at Goldman. It's not much, but it's a start. An admin position. After graduating summa cum laude with a computer science degree. After building applications that had been featured in TechCrunch. After teaching myself machine learning before it was trendy. But in their eyes, I was the failure who needed her successful brother to throw her a lifeline. What they didn't see, what I made sure they couldn't see, was that the startup's failure had taught me invaluable lessons. About market fit, about funding cycles, about the intersection of healthcare and technology. More importantly, it had introduced me to Dr. Sarah Kim, a Stanford physician frustrated with the archaic systems hospitals used to track patient data. "You built that diabetes app," she'd asked at a networking event. "I have an idea that could revolutionize how we handle patient monitoring, but I need someone who understands both the tech and the healthcare side." That conversation, held over lukewarm coffee in a Palo Alto cafe, was the birth of MedTech Solutions. But I couldn't tell my family. Not after their reactions to my first failure. Not when they were so eager to slot me into their narrative of the child who couldn't hack it in the real world. So I let them believe what they wanted while I built something extraordinary in secret. The early days of MedTech Solutions were nothing like the startup fantasies portrayed in movies. No glamorous offices or venture capital parties. Just Dr. Kim and me, coding in my childhood bedroom while my parents assumed I was playing on the computer and avoiding reality. I told them I was freelancing, doing small coding projects to make ends meet. It was partially true. I did take on freelance work to fund our initial development. But mostly, I was building the algorithm that would eventually become the core of our patient monitoring system. Victoria's having a hard time finding her place. I overheard my mother tell her book club. But we're being patient. Not everyone can be a Ryan. Not everyone could be a Ryan. The golden child who called his wins home weekly while I worked 20-hour days in secret. Who posted about his promotions on LinkedIn while I filed patents under an LLC that couldn't be traced back to me. Who brought home girlfriends from Harvard Business School while I turned down dates because I couldn't explain what I actually did all day. The breakthrough came 2 years into development. Dr. Kim had been testing our system with a small group of patients, and the results were extraordinary. Our AI could predict dangerous changes in patient vitals hours before traditional monitoring caught them. We prevented 3 cardiac events that would have been missed by standard protocols. "This is it," Sarah said, staring at the data. "This is going to change everything." She was right. But changing everything required money, and money meant investors, and investors meant exposure I wasn't ready for. Not with my family still telling everyone I was their unemployed daughter who couldn't hold down a job. I made a decision that would define the next 5 years of my life. I would build MedTech Solutions entirely in stealth mode. No press releases, no TechCrunch profiles, no LinkedIn updates. Just quiet, methodical growth funded by revenue rather than venture capital. "Are you insane?" Sarah asked when I explained my plan. "Every startup wants press. You're going to actively avoid it?" "My family." I started, then stopped. How could I explain that my parents' disappointment had become a protective shield? That their low expectations gave me freedom to build without scrutiny? That being underestimated was perhaps the greatest gift they'd unknowingly given me? "Trust me," I said instead. "We build first, reveal later." So we built. While my mother lamented my lack of direction at family dinners, I was negotiating our first hospital contract. While my father suggested I consider going back to school for a practical degree, I was hiring our first engineers. While Ryan regaled the family with stories of his latest deals, I sat quietly, knowing I'd just closed a partnership that would put our technology in 50 hospitals across California. The basement became my cover story. My parents' finished basement had a separate entrance, so I could come and go without much interaction. They assumed I was down there playing video games or drowning in self-pity. Actually, I'd converted it into a command center, complete with multiple monitors, secure servers, and video conferencing equipment for the international team I was quietly assembling. "At least she's not on drugs," I heard my father say once when a family friend asked about me. The bar was so low it was underground, which suited me perfectly. By year 3, MedTech Solutions had grown to 50 employees, all remote, all believing their mysterious CEO was simply very private. We had contracts with 200 hospitals, patents pending on our core technology, and revenue in the 8 figures. I incorporated in Delaware, kept our headquarters virtual, and maintained the fiction that I was a struggling freelancer living in my parents' basement. The irony of taking investor calls from the bedroom where I'd once cried over my family's disappointment wasn't lost on me. Neither was signing contracts worth millions while my mother left pamphlets for coding boot camps on my desk, just in case you want to update your skills. "You need to tell them," Sarah urged during one of our strategy sessions. "This is getting ridiculous. You're running a company worth hundreds of millions while pretending to be unemployed." "Not yet," I insisted. The longer they underestimate me, the bigger the reveal. But it was more than that. Their disappointment had become familiar, almost comfortable. I knew who I was in their eyes, the failure, the one who couldn't measure up. Revealing my success would mean redefining our entire relationship, and part of me wasn't ready for that earthquake. So I maintained the charade. Family dinners where Ryan dominated conversation with his latest financial conquests while I nodded quietly. Holidays where relatives asked if I was still figuring things out, and I mumbled something about exploring options. Watching my parents introduce Ryan as our son, the investment banker, while I was our daughter Victoria, she's in tech. The way they said tech, like it was a communicable disease. The hardest part was the pity. The way my mother's friends would pat my hand and tell me not to worry, everyone found their path eventually. The way Ryan would offer to review my resume, sure he could fix whatever was wrong with it. The way my father would sigh when he saw me, like I was a walking reminder of missed potential. I channeled it all into the company. Every condescending comment became fuel. Every pitying look drove me to work harder. Every time they dismissed my potential, I signed another contract, filed another patent, hired another brilliant mind who saw the vision I was building. By year 5, MedTech Solutions was valued at $300 million in private markets. We had over 500 employees across 15 countries. Our technology had saved thousands of lives, prevented countless medical emergencies, and revolutionized patient monitoring in ways my father's traditional medicine couldn't imagine. And still, I sat at family dinners as the disappointment who couldn't get her life together. The invitation to Ryan's engagement party came as he was making VP at Goldman, complete with a bonus that he couldn't resist mentioning was more than most people's annual salaries. His fiancée, Amanda Zhang, came from pharmaceutical royalty. Her father owned one of the largest drug companies in Asia and had recently expanded into the US market. Finally, a Mitchell wedding, my mother gushed, already deep in planning mode. And with the Zhang family. Do you know what this means for our social standing? I knew what it meant for my brother, a lifetime of being seen as Mr. Amanda Zhang, but he seemed fine with that trade-off. What I didn't know was that Richard Zhang, Amanda's father, had been trying to acquire MedTech Solutions for the past year through intermediaries. Every offer had been rejected by our mysterious CEO who refused to even take meetings. The night of the engagement party, I chose my outfit carefully. Nothing that suggested success, my family would notice and ask questions. Instead, I wore a simple black dress I'd owned for years, the kind of thing that screamed, trying but not quite succeeding. "Oh good, you made an effort," my mother said when she saw me, which was her version of a compliment. "Try to mingle tonight. You never know, someone might be hiring." Someone might be hiring. If only she knew I'd hired 12 people that week alone. The party was exactly what I'd expected. Held at the Palo Alto Hills Country Club, it was a parade of Silicon Valley wealth and traditional success. Tech executives who'd gone public, venture capitalists with funds larger than small countries' GDPs, doctors, and lawyers who'd followed conventional paths to conventional success. Ryan held court near the bar, Amanda on his arm like an accessories perfectly matched to his success. They looked like a catalog couple, attractive, accomplished, and utterly predictable. "There's the sister," I heard someone whisper. "The one who lives in the basement." I'd become family lore. The cautionary tale parents told their children about the importance of making good choices. The reminder that even successful families could produce failures. I was nursing a glass of wine in the corner, counting down minutes until I could politely leave, when the energy in the room shifted. Richard Zhang had arrived. He was exactly what you'd expect from a pharmaceutical CEO, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no. Amanda rushed to greet him, dragging Ryan along for introductions. I watched from my corner as they made the rounds, Richard shaking hands and making the kind of small talk that sealed deals and forged alliances. Then my mother spotted me and, in a burst of social anxiety about having an unoccupied daughter at such an important event, dragged me over. "Richard, this is our daughter Victoria," she said, her tone apologetic. "She's in tech." "Tech?" Richard's eyes sharpened. "What kind of tech?" "Oh, just some freelance coding," my mother interjected before I could answer. "Nothing like what Ryan does, of course. We're still hoping she'll find something more stable." Richard studied me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Victoria Mitchell," he said slowly. "Why does that name sound familiar?" "I have one of those names," I deflected, but something in his expression had changed. "No, I've definitely, wait." His eyes widened. "Victoria Mitchell. VM. The initials on all the MedTech Solutions correspondence." The room seemed to freeze. I saw the exact moment recognition dawn fully on his face. "You're the Victoria Mitchell who owns MedTech Solutions." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother laughed nervously. "I think there's some confusion. Victoria does freelance coding from our basement. She doesn't own any MedTech Solutions," Richard continued, ignoring her, his eyes never leaving mine. "The company that rejected our acquisition offer of $500 million. The company whose patient monitoring technology we've been trying to license for 2 years. The company that every major pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturer has been trying to identify the leadership of." That's impossible," Ryan said, his voice cracking slightly. "Victoria lives in our parents' basement. She's unemployed." "I work from the basement," I corrected quietly. "There's a difference." "You're telling me," my father said slowly, "that you own a company worth $500 million? Last valuation was actually $520 million, Richard said, still staring at me like I was a unicorn. "Though that was 6 months ago. Given their recent expansion into European markets, I'd estimate it's closer to $600 million now." The room erupted. Not just our immediate circle, but everyone within earshot. The Mitchell's failure daughter owned one of the most valuable private health tech companies in the world? The woman they'd pitted for 8 years was worth more than most of them combined? "This is a mistake," my mother insisted. "Victoria, tell them this is a mistake." I looked at her, at my father's stunned face, at Ryan's expression cycling between disbelief and rage, at the crowd of Silicon Valley elite who'd dismissed me for years. "It's not a mistake," I said simply. "I founded MedTech Solutions 8 years ago. We currently employ 1,847 people across 15 countries. Our technology is in over 3,000 hospitals worldwide. We hold 47 patents with another 63 pending. And yes, Mr. Zhang, we did reject your acquisition offer. Several times. But how?" my mother stammered. "I told you I was in tech," I said. "You just never asked what kind." The party dissolved into chaos. Richard Zhang abandoned all pretense of father of the bride duties to corner me about potential partnerships. Other guests, recognizing the name MedTech Solutions, suddenly wanted to know if I was raising capital. My phone, set to silent, lit up with messages from my management team wondering why our carefully guarded anonymity was suddenly blown. But I only had eyes for my family. My mother, whose face had gone pale. My father, looking at me like he'd never seen me before. And Ryan, whose engagement party had just been completely overshadowed by his failure of a sister. 8 years, my father said finally. 8 years of lying to us. 8 years of you assuming I was a failure, I corrected. I stopped correcting you after year 1. You let us believe you were unemployed, my mother accused. You needed to believe I was unemployed. Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you dismissed it as playing with computers or avoiding reality. So I stopped trying. While we supported you, I haven't taken a cent from you since I moved back home. I pay rent for the basement, utilities, everything. You just never noticed because you assumed Dad was covering for me. Ryan found his voice. This is bullshit. There's no way you built a company worth $600 million while living in our basement. I pulled out my phone, showing him the Bloomberg article that had run just that week. MedTech Solutions CEO remains mystery as company dominates patient monitoring market. My name wasn't in it, I'd been careful about that, but the details were all there. Fun fact, I added. Goldman Sachs was one of the banks that approached us about going public. You might have even worked on the initial assessment. His face went red. Why didn't you tell us? When? I asked. During the dinners where you dominated every conversation with your deals? During the holidays where Mom introduced me as her daughter who was still finding herself? During the family gatherings where everyone patted my hand and told me not to worry, not everyone could be successful like you? We were trying to help, my mother started. You were trying to fit me into a box I was never going to fit into. When I didn't, you wrote me off. And honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened. Being invisible to you meant I could build something extraordinary without your expectations weighing me down. Amanda, who'd been silent through all of this, suddenly laughed. This is incredible. Do you know how many people have been trying to figure out who runs MedTech? My father's been obsessed for years. And it's been you, just living in your parents' basement? The basement has excellent internet, I said dryly. Richard Zhang stepped forward. Ms. Mitchell, Victoria, I apologize for ambushing you at a family event, but would you be willing to discuss potential partnerships? Your technology with our distribution network. Richard, my mother snapped, some of her composure returning. This is my son's engagement party. Of course, my apologies. He handed me a business card. But please, call me. What you've built is remarkable. As he walked away, the full weight of what had just happened seemed to hit my family. 8 years of perception shattered in 8 minutes. I need air, Ryan said, storming toward the terrace. Amanda followed, looking conflicted. My parents stood frozen, still processing. Around us, the party continued, but with a different energy. People were Googling MedTech Solutions, whispering about valuations and patents and the mysterious CEO who'd been hiding in plain sight. Why? My mother asked finally, her voice small. Why would you hide this from us? I thought about all the ways to answer. The years of being compared to Ryan and found wanting. The subtle and not so subtle messages that my interests weren't valuable. The way they'd celebrated his every achievement while dismissing mine as hobbies. Because you'd already decided who I was, I said finally. The daughter who couldn't hack it in the real world. The one who needed coding bootcamp pamphlets and pity job offers. It was easier to let you believe that than to fight for recognition you weren't willing to give. That's not fair. Isn't it? I pulled up my phone, showing them emails. Here's the message I sent you 3 years ago about our first major hospital contract. You replied, that's nice, dear. Ryan just made associate. Here's the photo I sent of our first team meeting. You asked if I was finally making friends. Here's the article about our technology saving lives. You never opened it. My father took the phone with shaking hands, scrolling through years of attempted communication that had been dismissed or ignored. We thought you were struggling. We didn't want to pressure you by engaging with what we assumed were fantasies? Delusions? The desperate attempts of your failure daughter to seem important? He flinched. We were wrong. Yes, I agreed. You were. The party never quite recovered. Guests kept approaching me, some with congratulations, others with thinly veiled investment pitches. My family retreated to separate corners, processing the revelation in their own ways. I found Ryan on the terrace, staring out at the Silicon Valley lights. $600 million, he said without turning. I've been breaking my back at Goldman for 8 years, and you've been building a $600 million company in our basement. It wasn't a competition, I said. Wasn't it? He turned to face me. Every dinner, every family gathering, every time they held me up as the success while treating you like the failure, you could have said something. Would it have changed anything? Would you have stopped needing to be the golden child? Would they have suddenly valued what I was building? Or would they have just found ways to diminish it, to make it less than your achievements? He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. I'm proud of what you've built at Goldman, I continued. It's impressive. But I needed to build something they couldn't diminish by comparing it to you. Something so undeniably successful that when it finally came to light, there would be no question of its value. And now? Now we figure out how to be siblings without the golden child and black sheep dynamic. If you're interested. He was quiet for a long moment. I'm supposed to hate you right now. You just destroyed my engagement party. I reveal the truth at your engagement party. There's a difference. Semantics. But there was a slight smile on his face. Amanda's thrilled, by the way. Says I'm now the least interesting person in the relationship. You were always going to be the least interesting person in that relationship. He laughed despite himself. Yeah, probably. A pause. Why healthcare? Why medical technology? It was the first time anyone in my family had asked about the actual work, not just the valuation. Remember when Grandma was in the hospital? How the monitors kept failing, how they almost missed her heart attack because the systems weren't communicating properly. He nodded slowly. I kept thinking, we can stream movies instantly to our phones, but we can't get medical devices to talk to each other? It seemed like a problem worth solving. And you solved it. We solved it. Dr. Sarah Kim and I, and then the team we built. Our system has prevented thousands of medical emergencies. Saved lives. Made it so other families don't have to go through what we did with Grandma. He looked at me with something I'd never seen before, respect. That's actually amazing. We were interrupted by Amanda, who appeared with champagne. Celebrating seemed weird given everything, but I thought we could toast to plot twists. To plot twists, I agreed, accepting a glass. For what it's worth, she said, I think what you did is brilliant. Building something that's successful while your family underestimated you? That takes strength most people don't have. Or stubbornness, I suggested. Same thing, different branding. She clinked her glass against mine. I hope you'll still come to the wedding. Someone needs to keep my father from turning the reception into a business meeting. The rest of the evening was surreal. My parents attempted to rally, trying to shift into proud parent mode, but the whiplash was too severe. They kept starting sentences they couldn't finish, caught between their 8-year narrative of their disappointing daughter and the reality of what I'd achieved. We should celebrate, my mother said at one point. Have a party for your success. 8 years late, but sure, I said, and watched her flinch. It wasn't cruel, just true. And after 8 years of hiding, I was done softening truths for their comfort. As the party wound down, Richard Zhang approached one more time. I meant what I said. What you've built is remarkable. Most people would have leveraged family connections, taken traditional investment routes. You did it entirely on merit. I did it entirely in spite of my family connections, I corrected. He smiled. Even more impressive. I hope we can work together. And I hope your family realizes what they nearly missed. After the guests left, my family gathered in the country club's private dining room. The 5 of us, parents, Ryan, Amanda, and me, sitting around a table littered with engagement party debris and shattered assumptions. "I don't know where to start," my mother said finally. "How about congratulations?" Amanda suggested. "That's traditional when someone builds a revolutionary healthcare company." My mother shot her a look but then turned to me. "Congratulations," she said stiffly. "Though I still don't understand why." "Ellen," my father interrupted. "Just stop. We fucked up. Let's at least own that." I'd never heard him swear before. It was oddly validating. "We did," he continued. "We had a brilliant daughter building something incredible, and we were too blind to see it. Too stuck in our own definitions of success." He looked at me. "I'm sorry. Not just for not seeing it, but for creating an environment where you felt you had to hide it." "I want to show you something," I said, pulling out my phone. I navigated to a folder I'd labeled Family, screenshots and emails I'd saved over the years. "This is from 5 years ago. Our AI prevented a massive stroke in a 60-year-old patient. The daughter wrote to thank us, said we gave her 20 more years with her father. I forwarded it to you, Mom. You replied, 'That's nice, dear,' and then sent me a job posting for an entry-level position at Dad's hospital." I scrolled. "This is from 3 years ago. We got our first international patent approval. I was so excited, I called you, Dad. You said you were busy with Ryan's promotion dinner and could we talk later? We never did." More scrolling. 2 years ago, we hit $100 million in revenue. I tried to take you both to dinner to celebrate. You canceled because Ryan had a client in town." "Stop," my mother whispered. "Please." But I wasn't done. "Last year, we saved our 1,000th life. Not helped, not improved outcomes, directly saved from death. I sent you both a long email about what it meant to me, about how Grandma would have lived if she'd had our technology. Neither of you ever responded." The silence was heavy. Finally, Ryan spoke. "We're assholes." "Yeah," I agreed. "You kind of are." "Were," Amanda corrected. Past tense. "Because this is where it changes, right?" My family looked at me hopefully, but I wasn't ready for easy forgiveness. "I don't know," I said honestly. 8 years is a long time. And the thing is, your disinterest forced me to become entirely self-reliant. I built MedTech without needing your approval, your connections, or your support. I'm not sure I know how to include you now. We could learn, my father offered. About the technology, the company. If you're willing to teach us. I've been trying to teach you for 8 years. You weren't interested in learning when you thought I was a failure. Why should I believe you're genuinely interested now that you know I'm successful?" It was harsh, but necessary. The hurt of 8 years couldn't be erased by one revelation. "Because we're idiots who needed a wake-up call?" Ryan suggested. "Because we let our preconceptions blind us to who you really are? Because we want to do better?" "Wanting isn't enough," I said. "I wanted you to see me for 8 years." We talked until the country club staff started pointedly clearing tables around us. Not reconciliation, that would take time, but at least honest communication. My parents struggled with their guilt. Ryan wrestled with his displaced identity as the successful child. I grappled with whether I even wanted to let them into the life I'd built without them. Finally, as we prepared to leave, Amanda asked the question none of them had thought to ask: "What's next for MedTech?" I smiled, the first genuine smile of the evening. "We're launching a new platform next month. Predictive diagnostics using AI that can identify diseases years before symptoms appear. We're starting with cardiac conditions, the ones that killed Grandma." "That's..." My mother started, then stopped, tears in her eyes. "Yeah," I said. "It is." The valet brought our cars, and we stood in the awkward space between ending and beginning. 8 years of assumptions shattered, but what would be built in their place remained to be seen. "I'm proud of you," my father said suddenly. "Not for the money or the success, but for doing it anyway. For building something meaningful even when I failed to see its meaning. Thanks, I said, and meant it. It wasn't enough, not yet, but it was a start. As I drove away from the country club, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. The basement office that had hidden an empire. The dismissive comments that had fueled innovation. The family that had unknowingly given me the gift of invisibility. My phone buzzed with messages. My executive team, wondering about the sudden exposure. Journalists who'd somehow gotten my number. Investors who'd been trying to reach MedTech's mysterious CEO for years. Tomorrow, I'd have to deal with all of it. The end of anonymity, the beginning of a new phase for the company. The complicated work of rebuilding family relationships or deciding they weren't worth rebuilding. But tonight, I drove through the Silicon Valley streets where I'd built my empire in secret, windows down, feeling the weight of 8 years of hiding finally lift. The basement dweller. The disappointment. The failure who'd built a $600 million success while her family wasn't watching. I pulled into my parents' driveway. I still had things to collect from the basement office. The house was dark except for a light in my father's study. Through the window, I could see him at his computer, and I knew without looking that he was reading about MedTech solutions. Learning about what his daughter had built while he wasn't paying attention. I gathered my things from the basement. The servers would be moved to our new headquarters, the monitors donated, the memories packed away. 8 years of secret empire building reduced to boxes and cables. My phone rang. Sarah Kim, my co-founder, my partner in changing healthcare. So, she said without preamble, I hear we're out of stealth mode. Spectacularly out, I confirmed. And your family? Processing. Poorly. And you? I considered the question, standing in the basement that had been my hidden kingdom. Free, I said finally. Whatever happens next, at least I'm free. Good, she said. Because we have a company to run, lives to save, and a healthcare system to revolutionize. You ready to do it without hiding? I looked around the basement one last time, then headed for the stairs. Yeah, I said. I think I am. As I reached the top of the stairs, I found my mother waiting in the kitchen. She looked older than I remembered, worn by the evening's revelations. I couldn't sleep, she said unnecessarily. Me either. We stood there, 2 women who'd shared a house but not a life for 8 years. I used to check on you, she said suddenly. Late at night. You'd be down there, surrounded by screens, so focused you never heard me. I thought you were escaping into games or fantasies. I worried you were hiding from life. I was building a life, I corrected gently. I see that now. She looked at her hands. I failed you. We failed you. Not because you needed our help to succeed, clearly you didn't. But because we couldn't see who you really were. We were so busy trying to make you fit our definition of success that we missed you exceeding it. It was the most honest she'd been in years. I don't need apologies, I said. I need you to understand that I'm not going to become a different person now that you know about MedTech. I'm still going to work 18-hour days. I'm still going to prioritize the company over family dinners. I'm still going to be the daughter who doesn't fit your mold. I'll just be doing it from a real office instead of your basement. She nodded slowly. I can work with that. Can you work with me trying to do better? We'll see. I left her there, processing in the kitchen where she'd once left coding bootcamp pamphlets for her directionless daughter. The next morning, the tech press exploded. Mystery MedTech Solutions CEO revealed as Victoria Mitchell ran across every industry publication. My carefully maintained anonymity shattered in a matter of hours. My phone became unusable from the volume of calls, texts, and emails. I drove to our actual headquarters in Palo Alto, a building my family had passed hundreds of times without knowing I owned it. My assistant, James, met me at the door with coffee and a carefully neutral expression. So, he said, interesting evening? You could say that. The board wants an emergency meeting. The PR team is having what I believe they're calling a situation. And there are approximately 47 interview requests from major media outlets. Ignore the media, calm the PR team, tell the board everything is under control. Is it? He asked. Under control? I thought about my family, probably waking up to the same news coverage. About Ryan, whose engagement party would forever be remembered as the night his sister revealed she was secretly a multimillionaire. About my parents, grappling with 8 years of misjudgment. The company is under control, I said. The rest. We'll figure it out. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. MedTech Solutions adjusted to having a public face. I did selective interviews, focusing on our technology and mission rather than the family drama. When pressed about why I'd hidden my identity for so long, I simply said I preferred to let the work speak for itself. My family attempted to adjust in their own ways. My father started reading medical technology journals, trying to understand what we'd built. He'd forward me articles with tentative notes. Is this similar to your system? Or, thought you might find this interesting. Baby steps, but steps nonetheless. My mother was more complicated. The shift from pitying me to being proud of me gave her whiplash. She'd start to fall into old patterns, suggesting I dress better for interviews, wondering if I should hire a CEO to be the face of the company, then catch herself, remember who I'd become without her input. Ryan surprised me most. A month after the party, he showed up at our headquarters with lunch from our favorite childhood restaurant. Peace offering, he said, holding up the bags. We ate in my office, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, a far cry from the basement, and talked like we hadn't in years. Not about success or failure, but about the work itself. I looked into your patents, he said. The predictive modeling algorithm is brilliant. I don't understand half of it, but the parts one do. How did you even think of that approach? It was the first time he'd ever asked about my actual work with genuine interest. Remember when Grandma was sick? How they kept running the same tests, getting the same results, missing what was actually happening. He nodded. I kept thinking, the data was there. All the signs were in her medical history, her test results, her symptoms. But no one was looking at it holistically. So I built a system that could. And now it saves lives. Now it saves lives, I confirmed. I'm jealous, he admitted. Not of the money or the success, but, you built something that matters. I just push numbers around to make rich people richer. So change that, I said. You're brilliant with finance. Use it for something meaningful. He looked thoughtful. Maybe I will. 3 months later, he left Goldman Sachs to become CFO of a nonprofit focused on healthcare access in underserved communities. The pay cut was astronomical. Our parents were horrified. I'd never been prouder of him. Amanda turned out to be an unexpected ally in navigating the family dynamics. Her blunt assessments and outsider perspective cut through years of dysfunction. They're not bad people, she told me during wedding planning. They're just people who confused narrow definitions with high standards. You broke their narrow definitions. Give them time to adjust their standards. The wedding itself was beautiful, and notably different from the engagement party. Richard Zhang and I announced a partnership between MedTech Solutions and Zhang Pharmaceuticals during the cocktail hour, much to my mother's horror and Amanda's delight. At least someone's working at my wedding, Amanda laughed, watching her father and me sketch out preliminary agreements on napkins. My parents slowly, painfully, began to see me. Not the version they'd imagined, not the failure they'd constructed, but the actual person who'd built something remarkable while they weren't watching. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, arguments, old patterns that died hard. But it was progress. A year after the revelation, we held MedTech's first public conference. We were announcing our expansion into early cancer detection, technology that could identify tumors years before current methods. It was the culmination of everything we'd built, everything I'd hidden, everything that mattered. My family sat in the front row. Not because they were family, but because they'd earned their seats by finally caring about the work itself. My father had become an informal advisor on medical integration. My mother had connected us with legal experts in healthcare regulation. Ryan managed our charitable foundation. As I took the stage, looking out at an audience of healthcare providers, investors, and journalists, I thought about the journey. 8 years in a basement, building in secret. A lifetime of being unseen, using invisibility as armor. The spectacular revelation that changed everything and nothing. MedTech Solutions began with a simple question. I started my presentation. Why do we accept that medical technology should be decades behind consumer technology? Why do we tolerate systems that can't communicate, devices that can't predict, algorithms that can't learn? I clicked to the first slide, a photo of my grandmother. This is Emily Mitchell. She died of a heart attack that 3 different monitoring systems failed to predict. She was my grandmother, and her death was preventable. The audience was silent, attentive. Every preventable death is someone's grandmother, someone's father, someone's child. Today, we're announcing technology that ensures fewer families have to experience that loss. The presentation went on, technical specifications, trial results, implementation timelines. But what mattered was the mission, the purpose that had driven me through 8 years of hiding and a year of painful visibility. Afterward, at the reception, I found my family clustered near the demo stations, my father explaining our cardiac prediction model to other doctors with genuine enthusiasm. My mother was discussing investment opportunities with venture capitalists, protective of my interests in ways she'd never been before. Ryan was showing Amanda and other attendees how the patient app worked, proud of his sister's work in ways that had nothing to do with valuations. "You did it," Sarah Kim said, appearing at my elbow. "Not just the company. This." She gestured at my family. "You gave them a second chance." "They earned it," I said. "Eventually." "And you? What did you earn?" I thought about it. The company was thriving. The technology was saving lives. My family, imperfect but trying, had finally seen me. But what had I gained from those 8 years of voluntary invisibility? "Freedom," I said finally. I earned the freedom to define success for myself. To build without permission. To matter without approval. Was it worth it? The years of hiding? I watched my father animatedly explain our algorithm to a skeptical surgeon, my mother defend our pricing model to an investor, my brother proudly introduce people to his sister, the CEO. "Ask me in another 8 years," I said. The reception continued around us, deals being made, connections forming, the future of healthcare being shaped by technology born in a basement. But I stepped outside for a moment of quiet, looking up at the Silicon Valley sky where dreams either soared or crashed. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan, "Proud of you. Also, Amanda's father wants to discuss acquiring us again." I told him to fuck off. Was that right? I laughed, typing back, "Perfect. Some things aren't for sale." "Like family," he responded. "Like family," I agreed. I went back inside to find my mother in animated discussion with a reporter about supporting entrepreneurial children. "The key," she was saying with stunning lack of self-awareness, "is to encourage their interests, even when you don't understand them." I caught her eye and raised an eyebrow. She had the grace to blush. "I'm a work in progress," she said when the reporter moved on. "Aren't we all?" I replied. As the evening wound down, my family helped pack up demo equipment and gather promotional materials, tasks they wouldn't have dreamed of doing a year ago. We worked in comfortable rhythm, the kind that comes from practice and patience. "Family dinner Sunday?" my mother asked as we loaded the last box. "I promise not to leave career pamphlets on your desk." "I don't live at home anymore, Mom." "Haven't for 6 months." "I know. I meant at your place. If you'll have us." "My place." A penthouse in San Francisco with views of the bay, purchased with the money I'd earned while they thought I was unemployed. They'd visited once, awkwardly, still adjusting to the reality of my success. "Sure," I said. "But I'm cooking. Your culinary skills haven't improved with your awareness." "Fair," she laughed, and it was almost natural. As they prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about what you said. About Grandma, about preventable deaths. I want to help, if you'll let me. Real help, not just networking. I want to understand the technology, maybe help with the medical integration side." "That would be good," I said, meaning it. "We could use your expertise." "And I could use the purpose," he admitted. "Retirement isn't what I expected. This matters." One by one, they hugged me goodbye, real hugs, not the performative ones we'd exchanged for 8 years. Ryan held on longest. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For showing me there's more than one way to matter." After they left, I stood in the empty conference center, surrounded by the detritus of our successful launch. Sarah appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. "To visible success," she toasted. "To invisible foundations," I countered. We drank, 2 women who'd built something extraordinary while the world wasn't watching. "So what's next?" she asked. "Now that you're out of the basement, out of the shadows?" I thought about the question. The company was positioned for explosive growth. The technology was revolutionary. The family dynamics were healing. Everything I'd hidden was now in the light. "The same thing as always," I said. "We build. We save lives. We prove that success doesn't look like what people expect. But now people are watching." "Let them watch," I said. "The work speaks for itself." As we left the building, my phone lit up with messages. Congratulations from industry colleagues. Interview requests from major media. Investment offers from firms that had been chasing us for years. And buried among them, a text from my mother, "Saw the presentation online. Grandma would be so proud. We are too. Finally. Finally." Such a small word for such a long journey. I drove home through the city where I'd hidden in plain sight, past the country club where truth had detonated, past my parents' house where a basement had concealed an empire. The girl who'd been dismissed as a failure, who'd built $600 million in value while her family pitted her, who'd saved lives while they thought she was wasting hers. Some people build in spotlight. Others build in shadows. Both can change the world, one just takes longer for the world to notice. As I pulled into my building's garage, my phone rang. An unknown number, but I recognized the area code, Boston. "Ms. Mitchell? This is Dr. Patricia Reeves from Massachusetts General. We've been following MedTech's work. We have a particularly challenging case, a child with a rare cardiac condition. None of our current monitoring systems can predict her episodes. We wondered if your technology..." "Send me the files," I said immediately. "We'll have our team review tonight." Because that's what mattered. Not the valuations or the visibility or even the family reconciliation. A child in Boston who might live because of technology built in a basement by a woman too stubborn to accept failure as her story. I worked through the night, the way I had for 8 years, the way I would for years to come. But now the lights in my penthouse blazed openly, no longer hidden, no longer ashamed. The basement dweller had built an empire. The family failure had saved lives. The invisible daughter had finally been seen. And this was just the beginning. Looking back on that journey from basement programmer to CEO, from family disappointment to revealed success, I learned that sometimes the greatest achievements happen when no one's watching. That being underestimated can be a superpower if you use it right. That family relationships can survive even the biggest revelations if there's love underneath the hurt. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever built something amazing while others counted you out, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Where are you watching from? What dreams are you building that others don't see yet? And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the family failure who was secretly succeeding, or if you're still in that building phase where no one sees your potential, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps these stories reach others who need to hear that success comes in many forms, and sometimes the best revenge is simply living your truth. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember, They can only underestimate you if you let their estimates matter. Build anyway. Succeed anyway. And when the time is right, let the truth speak louder than their assumptions ever could. Until next time, keep building your empire, whether they're watching or not.